This is Coffee and Conversations by Sambalate, episode number 8. And today we are here at Honey Salt, our neighbor, and on their private dining. And we have the honor and privilege to have Elizabeth Blau, the CEO of Blau Associates, and Kelley Jones from True Hospitality, the CEO. And both of those people here today, they are probably, let's say, one of the top in the hospitality right now in our industry, here in Vegas. And it is a privilege that we're going to discuss about what's the future of the hospitality, because there's so much going on right now. Our life have changed so much in the past 6 months, and what's going to happen with our industry. And I think you guys have traveled a lot, networked with so many different people, and you guys can talk a little bit about yourself and about what's going to happen. Elizabeth.
Sure. Well, I think what we're going through right now is just something really unimaginable. I mean, we've been through financial crisis. We've been through the horrific events at Mandalay Bay with the shooting and 9/11. And so I think that no one could have ever dreamed. I mean, obviously some sci-fi movies and writers have dreamed of something this incredible. But, you know, first and foremost, when things, were starting to shut down and we were at the beginning of the pandemic, it was, how do we protect the people that work for us? And how do we keep people employed? Because we had no idea what was going to happen with the government stimulus. But Kelley and I must have been on the same wavelength, because was really frightening when the schools closed and when Three Square had to pivot on their model and actually close their kitchen, which runs on so many volunteers. And, with the massive closures, there were so many people out of work. First and foremost, what people in the hospitality industry do is think about how to protect others in the community. And so we started something called Delivering with Dignity. As you can see, this is a private dining room, but since we can't have private events, this has been turned into, basically a nonprofit community kitchen. And with Graffiti Bow and the Jolt and Valencia Gold and an army of volunteers, we've managed to get over 200,000 nutritious meals out directly to the doorsteps of those most vulnerable in the community. And when you think about it, these aren't, FEMA meals. These aren't, cold sandwiches. These are, are meals that, people can reheat, and they're made by, with dignity from our chefs. And so, it's just been truly overwhelming trying to figure out how to keep our businesses alive, how to lobby both state and national and federal officials. I've, written several op-ed pieces and articles, and we have a Facebook Save Our Restaurant community page. But it just seems like every day is a fight for survival. Yesterday we were able to reopen our bar, so that was nice, because you're in the beverage business. I mean, that beverage side of our business is maybe the difference between profitability and not profitability. And when you limit our seats to 50%, or what's happening in New York at 25%, that doesn't mean that we're at 50% of profitability. That 50% is all of our profitability. And so it's totally devastating to our industry.
How about you, Kelley? What do you have to say?
I mean, yeah, we're all feeling the same pain here at this table, and it doesn't do any of us any good to know all of us are going through it, that's for sure. But, as Elizabeth said, the week of March 16th, we closed down 6 hotel food and beverage operations that we were operating, 2 food halls, and in fact, we had just opened our newest restaurant at AT&T's world headquarters in Dallas. AT&T has 7,000 employees in 4 city blocks, and they ended up, creating this discovery district, an entertainment center. And so we opened up a massive beer garden and barbecue restaurant 3 weeks before the shutdown. So grand opening, grand closing. So, we ended up laying off, quite a couple hundred people, and it was, it was devastating. I know my family's going to be okay on the other end of this. The line cook that's got 2 and 3 jobs, can't get one, how is he supporting or she supporting their family? So, you know, like Elizabeth said, restaurants are all about community, and we jumped in to the same arena, but doing it different. We're not doing prepared meals. Created a charity called Hope for the City, and we actually are operating 13 pop-up food pantries 5 days a week around the Las Vegas Valley. And they're all drive up, and so we're giving out enough food to feed a family for a week. So we're giving, you know, there's always a protein, there's always vegetables, fruits, there's typically starches, you know, whether it's potatoes or rice or grain of some kind. And if you'd have told me 28 weeks ago that I'd still be out feeding people 28 weeks later, I wouldn't have believed it. But here's what I'm positive of. We're going to be out another 28 weeks because it's just going to be so long for us to recover, especially here in Las Vegas. I mean, you know, even the places that are open, they're only open at about 40% of their staffing capacity. You know, when you start reading these massive layoffs, 18,000 people, 6,000 people, it's just, you know, I think there's potentially a mass exodus out of Las Vegas. I've already known people that have left, you know, going home, live with mom and dad again, or, you know, go, you know, where the work is. And, you know, it's devastating, you know, and we're in the restaurant business. Think about the convention business. Think about the live music industry. Think about the, you know, concert industry. Who knows when that's ever coming back?
Right. Yeah, one thing about watching and listening to several CEOs, different company, airlines, and they say it's going to take so long to recover. And even here in Las Vegas, like yesterday, the CFO from the Starbucks, he said he doesn't see the company start recovering in 6 months from now. And you're talking about a major corporation. How about the small business like in Las Vegas? How are we going to overcome this because our city, our economy, relying so much on hospitality? So how you think that we're going to come up with this?
Well, as Kelley said, I mean, we're a city that is anchored by over 30 million, you know, visitors a year. When CES canceled in January, I mean, you know, that was not a positive symbol for moving forward. And then we lost the, you know, the National Rodeo Finals. So we need that convention business back. We need, you know, air travel back before we're going to look at recovery. So, I mean, you know, there are people that are talking 18 months, not just 6 months. But it's clear that we're going to have to get through this election. There's the Independent Restaurant Coalition, the National Restaurant Association have been lobbying. There's a Restaurant Acts bill that's, you know, worth several $100 billion. That's another stimulus because that PPP money was a lifeline in February, March, and April, but it's September. That money is gone for many of us, and so, until, you know, we see some additional federal and state aid, you know, it's going to continue to be devastating. We all pay for business interruption insurance. That's been categorically denied. There's no liability protection. Frankly, I feel that any of us sitting at this table and the people that work with us, we're like frontline workers. I mean, everybody coming in here is putting themselves at risk to feed people, and then in addition to, you know, to feed the community, and yet there's no protection. The landlords are not working with us for the most part. It's completely ridiculous that our landlord, you know, feels that with the PPP dollars they got paid 100%, and that they should continue to be, you know, paid at 100%. When I can't use this room, it's a community kitchen, and when, you know, I can't seat 50% of the dining room. Well, you know what? People don't eat at 9 o'clock here, and they also don't eat at 4 o'clock, and so I'm feeding half the, you know, the number of people that I've ever done before.
Because even in Boca Park, I noticed like Cheesecake, Corner Grill, Grimaldi's, everybody's closing 9 o'clock because there is no traffic.
No.
After it dies completely. I used to close 8 o'clock. I'm closing 6 o'clock.
Yeah. Nobody wants to leave their homes. I mean, people are frightened. I mean, they're going out for, you know, for essentials. You know, there's people that will go out on occasion to places that they feel safe and, you know, that are smaller in neighborhood. But it's a tough struggle, and I think that we're going to have to get through this election now. The only thing on anyone's mind is is which party's going to get the Supreme Court. Are they going to wait, or are they going to nominate? And the 16 million people that are employed in the independent restaurant community, don't forget about us, because we're bigger than the airlines, we're bigger than banking, and we're too important to fail. And yet we're in the midst of politics instead of really thinking about the people that are at the heart of every American city.
Because the airline last week, they just entered DC, and they want a $50 billion additional for relief, because otherwise they're going to lay off thousands of people in the industry. They're going to ground more planes, and airlines are one of those things that keep the world moving.
I think one of the frustrating things is either we don't know anything about this disease, or it's the smartest thing in the world, because we have to limit our seating to 20 to 50%, but airlines can fly full. And it's like, we can social distance in a restaurant. You're not social distancing. I've flown 4 times now, and the planes were either empty or packed.
Right.
And when you're sitting in a packed,
supposed to say the middle row.
not American Airlines.
Yeah.
Excuse
and how about
me.
New York? You can't eat in a restaurant, but you can ride in the subway? Like, how does that make sense?
I mean, and that's just it. The way, I'm open in 4 states, and not one of the 4 states is the same in what they're requiring. And the one thing I require in all my restaurants that isn't a requirement in any states is no employee can clock in unless I take your temperature. And that's not a mandate. I mean, who wouldn't think that would be the first thing they would mandate? So, that's why I say, does COVID know? Does COVID know that if you go from 6 to 7 people, that you're more at risk? Does COVID know, if you have 50 people, 51, you're more at risk? I mean,
Masks, no masks. I mean,
I think when we reopened May 31st or May 30th, I can't remember, people start coming back but when a few weeks later, when they mandate the mask, that's when we experienced major disappearance of people, because now people don't want to wear the mask. I don't like to wear a mask. I wear it because I have to, but otherwise.
well, you wear it if you want to go in anywhere.
Right.
Right. But the moment people walk into a restaurant, I mean, they know they can take the mask off of the table. I mean, they're just ripping it off. So then, on top of it, you have to have an 18-year-old hostess be the mask police. And so, there's just a whole nother level of drama there.
Having to have your staff all of a sudden be the police is bananas.
We got already 2 notices. One, because somebody was sitting outside by himself and wasn't drinking coffee, anything, just sitting there. We got a notice because of that. And because went inside and the barista moved the mask a bit, and so they gave us a notice.
Wow, look at those football coaches. They're getting fined $100,000
know.
for not wearing a mask.
Oh, really? So the hospitality is changing, and I think how people are going to eat, because they're talking about going digital, people are going to eat more takeout. But I think, in my experience, I'd rather go and eat in a place instead, picking up all the time. So where you inside?
Well, my hope and prayer is that we go back to the old normal, that we can, hospitality by definition is warm, personal, engaging service, right? There's nothing warm, personal, engaging about technology. And, for now, I mean, I think, a couple of our concepts, we have a vegan restaurant, and vegan people are only going to eat vegan, and we already did 40% of our business was takeout and delivery anyway prior to COVID. And then we have ramen shops in college towns, and those are all about takeout, delivery. So those, were kind of bulletproof. But, again, right now, I mean, Texas, we're now open 75% in our restaurant there, and we have 300 outdoor seats, so we're crushing it there. Because, I mean, again, I knew that this was a political issue, and I told these guys this before you got here. My landlord for the vegan restaurant I have here in Vegas, my lease is up in January. And so I called him. I said, I want to get together and talk to you about renewing the lease. He said, how long do you want to renew it for? I go, another 5 years. And then I said, but Heshy, I go, no, you can't escalate the rent on me until I can open up at 100%. He goes, well, let's meet about it. So we set a meeting date, and he called me 2 hours before the meeting. He said, let's cancel the meeting until after the election. And I'm like, well, what do you think that all of a sudden this is going to go away and, we aren't going to be talking about, a rent, de-escalation because you think all of a sudden I'm going to be able to open it 100%? So he said, well, we'll just meet after the election. So I said, okay.
I told Kelley I have an experience with one of my landlords. I'm not going to tell the location, but because I'm surrounded with so many office parks that support the hospitality. In many of those offices, they gave an option for people to work from home or they can go to the office whenever. And my revenue is down by 50%. I asked the landlord and I gave my P&L and everything, and he just told me, I really don't care. Either you pay me or I lock you out.
Well, today in the newspaper in New York City, 85% of restaurateurs said they can't pay their rent this month. So the landlords are going to get a rude awakening because some of them will be able to refill these spaces, but you are going to have a ghost town, and you're going to have people who decide, you know what, this industry is too hard to make single-digit, profitability. Our restaurant side, coffee's probably much better, and ramen, but full-service restaurants are lucky to be at single-digit profitability, and I think you've seen. The chef of Prune in New York, she just said, forget it. I'm done. This has been a good run, and I'm going to go do something else.
It's so sad because so many people's dream, all life investment and hard work, dedication, love, and decided to be wiped out so fast.
But think about every high school student, every college student, every aspiring actor or athlete or lawyer. I mean, they get a job in the restaurant industry. We accept everyone. It doesn't matter your education. You don't have to have a high school degree. It doesn't matter your ethnic background, your racial, your gender. I mean, it's just, if you're going to work hard, we're willing to take you and we're willing to teach you with no experience. And so there were no jobs available. I mean, college graduates, I mean, they've spent, years and years to get into these colleges to study hard, and there are no jobs available because people that have been working for 10 or 15 years in, various careers are being laid off. And so, it's very demoralizing for people as well. And so, I think that from a government perspective, it's like, how do you help the most people? I mean, there's obviously, as Kelley said, so many industries. I read this thing the other day. Think about it. Think of how many millions of pounds of excess popcorn there is. I mean, it's silly, but there are no stadiums, there's no movies. So, nobody's eating popcorn out. And so, but there are farmers who are now, I mean, during the pandemic when all of the Strip was closed, we had people dropping off all of the, artisan farmers. I mean, they had nowhere to go with their food. And so we put it into the Delivering with Dignity meals because, better than, it going to waste.
Yeah, we would get whole trucks with, 50-pound bags of onions and 5 gallons of, sour cream. And believe it or not, we'd have a 5-gallon thing of sour cream. A car would roll by and go, "Can I have that?" And it's like, yeah, I don't know what you're going to do with it, but and it's really sad to see because it's not going away anytime soon. I'm on a plane tomorrow. My first business trip. I flew 23,000 miles in January and February. I got off the plane February 27th. And it's like, wow, I haven't traveled, which has been great, on a lot of respects. But, we're taking advantage, unfortunately, of, in Park City, Utah, a bunch of restaurants have closed. So we're going to look at spaces, and we have a fast casual concept that we want to roll out and use that as our pilot. And because I think fast casual delivery pickup is going to be a big thing, from now on.
I mean, I think they're right. I think that no matter what happens with this election, that there's going to be a large swath of the American public who is not happy. I think that in my lifetime, I've never seen this country so divisive. I've never seen people unable to communicate and listen to one another. And, I am in a unique position because I support, principles on both sides with both parties, but it's very difficult to have conversations with people who don't agree and, are so myopic. So, usually in an election, it's like, okay, there's a breath of hope and we're going to go in a good direction of change. But I just feel that that both options leave just numerous challenges, and so I'm not sure what your landlord is actually thinking is going to happen at the end that's going to put him in a better position, unless there's a vaccine and we can, move beyond this, because I don't understand how a city like Las Vegas that lives on our new sports team and our huge conventions and our nightclubs and about people gathering. I mean, I watched the Kentucky Derby, and you watch, there was, tens of thousands of people shoulder to shoulder, and, parades and celebrations and weddings. I mean, I don't see how we can't go back to the old normal. I am certainly ready for it, and I'm sure most people feel the same.
I always have to be very cautious, excuse me, when I talk to people on where they sit on the social distancing spectrum, because we've been out, we're out, we're serving people, we're feeding people, visiting our restaurants that are open, but there are people that are hiding in their closet with the lights out and the door still locked. And what blew me away this Saturday, my wife went to, she's on the executive committee of her sorority, and so they all met in Summerlin at a park, and they were all 6 social distance, and she came home, she goes, do you know I'm the only one that has ever gone out other than to get groceries of all of us there? And I'm like, wait. Yeah, she's like, I'm the only one that's been to a restaurant. I'm the only one back in the gym. I'm the only one that's going out and actually socializing with friends. They are completely, and they're young. I mean, they're in their mid-30s. And they're completely social distancing still 6.5 months later. And that blew me away that, there's still people that are just like,
a lot.
And by the way, this disease is real and it's easily contagious. I get that. But, at some point, life's got to go and be lived.
I agree, because we decide to stop our life at the sudden and sacrifice and hurting everybody's financing business.
Right. Instead, we're 7 months later, and we're in the same position. And I read that Spain is closing down again. Israel is closing down again. There's a lot of European countries that are, having surges in numbers, and so it's just incredibly frustrating.
So, Kelley, you're talking about hope for the city, and I remember a few weeks ago you said how many tons of food they used to serve in the whole year, and how many tons have served so far. It's amazing, the number.
Yeah, so the largest food pantry in southern Nevada served 800,000 pounds of food last year. So far, Hope for the City in its first 6 months and 1 week has served over 7 million pounds of food. Wow. And then, by the way, that's just what we're putting out there. I can't imagine, add to that what you're doing and what other people in the city are doing. And that's, the most rewarding thing, is to be able to, see people that come through the same line every single week and, actually starting to get a relationship with them 28 weeks later. So this week, today, was 28 weeks. I was out at Coronado High School this morning. And we're running out of food. So I don't know if this is happening with you, but it went like this for the first 12 weeks. Just every week, more and more cars until we capped out 1,200 cars at Sunset Station one day. And it was like we just served 1,200 families food for a week, and then, when we first started, we did Palace Station, and on our second week, the line wrapped around Palace Station and snaked down Sahara all the way to Fort Apache. The police had to turn the traffic lights to blinking red lights because people were cutting out of Decatur and jumping on what they thought was the back of the line, and yet the line is 3 miles behind you. And there were fights in the street because you think about it, the first 2 weeks nobody knew what was going on. We did something completely unprecedented and shut down our economy. I mean, living through the gas shortage lines in the 70s and, 9/11 and then, the financial crisis, the shooting on the Strip, and then this is a whole new thing for me. If you'd have told me this would happen, I never could have believed it.
Magicians, we have family style meals. We do, all of the holidays. We did Mother's Day and Father's Day barbecues to go, and and all of the Jewish holidays have been incredibly busy. We do secretburger.com, and I do cooking demos at home, and you come and you pick up the entire meal and then the ingredients for the dishes that we demo. And you know, you just have to be as creative as you possibly can to make people feel safe and comfortable, you know, to come into the restaurant. You probably see the big pile of teddy bears. Well, you know, instead of just removing the bar stools, we fill them with bears. We are Honey Salt, but just to give people a smile, because I think that, you know, when people do venture out and they come to Honey Salt, that you know, like if they're coming to Samba Latte, they, you know, they're kind of hoping for, you know, escape, or to pretend for just, you know, an hour or so that, you know, that we are not living in this terrible bubble, and that, you know, there is some sense of normalcy, of being able to gather with your friends or your family for, you know, a meal, different than, you know, something arriving in a plastic or a cardboard box to your house through an anonymous delivery driver who texts you and drops it at the door. So, you know, we have a real responsibility to try and provide that experience, and so that's what we've been trying to do.
Okay. How about you, Kelley?
You know, again, you know, trying to find and follow and teach our teams about the government guidelines, because, like you, we don't want to get fined. You know, we had a big turnover in Boulder, Colorado. We were inviting our staff back when we were able to reopen, and most of them said, nope, I'm on unemployment, so I'm going to stay on unemployment. So, you know, it took a while to get that location staffed back up and operating again. But, you know, we're running, we lost $19,000 there last month and $18,000 the month before. And, you know, if PPP runs out, which it's about to, and then, you know, our landlord's not working with us anymore. We got 2 free months of rent out of them. But, you know, you make a penny a day, you can stay in business a long time. You lose a penny a day, at some point you're going to close the door. And so that's, you know, the reality. I'd say it's got 2 more months before, you know, the well runs dry. The other properties, on the other hand, are doing well. They're doing better. Nowhere near at where they were, you know, prior to shutdown. But at least, you know, we're able to keep the staff employed. And in, you know, 2 of the properties, we brought everybody back. And, you know, there's a local following. So we've been, you know, in Vermont for almost 5 years now. And we're right on Church Street. So, you know, we have our local following. And here in Las Vegas, we have our local following. But, you know, we're not making any money. We're at least not having to close the doors. We're breaking even. Yeah, I mean.
People employed.
Yeah.
Yeah. We
stop, because if you stop, the restart again, that's a big.
Yeah, and one of my staff here locally, right as soon as we were able to reopen, 4 days later, she's tested positive for COVID. So we closed down until everybody could get tested, and then once we had everybody's, you know, negative test results back, we opened it back up. But, you know, that's 4 days of no revenue.
Anyway, I'd like you to give a brief of your experience, because a lot of people know your name, but doesn't know all your background, because you have done so much in the city here since it had been 22 years, and have been involved with such a great project, you and Kelley.
I started in this business when I was 16. I was a taco girl at happy hour at a restaurant called Pancho McGee's, where I grew up in Connecticut. I went to Georgetown University undergraduate. I thought I wanted to be an attorney. I wanted to be a litigator or go into politics. But I always, you know, had a passion for the restaurant industry. So I ended up getting my master's at Cornell at the hotel school. And then I went to work for Sirio Macchioni, probably the world's most famous restaurateur at La Cirque in New York. And then I opened Osteria del Circo. And then I negotiated the deal to bring those 2 restaurants here to Las Vegas to Bellagio. So the original intent was those were going to be the only outside restaurants at Bellagio. And somewhere in the process, Mr. Wynn stole me away. And so it's been an extraordinary experience. And so obviously Bellagio has Jean-Georges and had taught English at the time, and Michael Mina and a Petrosian caviar bar, and Nancy Silverton doing a La Brea bakery in the back of the house so that we could have extraordinary bread throughout the building. And so I've spent a lot of my career in the hotel side of things, casino hotel side of things here, and I opened my first restaurant with Carrie Simon at the Hard Rock, which was kind of groundbreaking at the time because we took a lot of the principles of what we did at Bellagio, but we had it in a rock and roll environment, and everybody was wearing blue jeans, and it was an extraordinary time. And so I married my husband, who's also a chef, and we started embarking on our journey of opening restaurants. And so we have Buddy V's at the Venetian, we have Honey Salt, and we're reconcepting Andiron with Jeff Fine in downtown Summerlin. And we also do consulting, which brings us pretty much could go mile to mile with Kelley. We have projects in Saudi Arabia and Korea. We have our restaurants in Vancouver. So keep pretty busy, but philanthropy is really also at the core. It's one of the corporate pillars that we have, and so I've sat for 12 years on the board at the Culinary Institute of America and also on the Dean's Advisory Board here at UNLV. And I am the culinary chairwoman at Three Square, which obviously is our local food bank, which, has done an extraordinary job, helping both of us, to keep people fed. So keep as busy as I possibly can. And the most exciting thing that I did in February before the whole world shut down is we launched a women's hospitality initiative to try and combat the gender inequity of women that are going to culinary school or going to hospitality school, which in both schools is at 50% or in many schools even higher. Yet less than 7% of women are making it to either an executive chef or a restaurant owner. So there's a big schism there. So hopefully once we can start to figure out how to save the whole restaurant industry, we can go back to making gender and racial inequity a thing of the past.
I was born. So I started at 14 in a Greek diner in New Jersey, one that has everything from scrambled eggs to lobster tails on the menu. Started bussing tables and washing dishes, and then became a cook when I was 17 there. I worked there for 4 years of high school, and then just cooked all over, became a chef. I was a chef before it was cool to be a chef, people all the time say to me, "Oh my God, you were a chef?" Not one person ever said, "You're a chef," when I was one. Because back then, before food TV and celebrity chefs, chef was a tradesman, like an electrician or a plumber. And it's really cool what's happened now. Food TV has elevated our industry to be cool. So now it's cool to be in the restaurant business. Not cool to be in the restaurant business right this second, but it's cool to be in the restaurant business. I moved to Vegas in '98. Actually, Elizabeth was one of the first people I met when I got out here to open Mandalay Bay. So I had a nightclub and 4 restaurants that I was the director of operations for, and then ended up Kimpton recruited me to go and run their restaurant division. So I moved to San Francisco, and then Steven Starr recruited me to come back to the East Coast to grow him out of Philadelphia. And so we opened some restaurants in New York and Florida and Atlantic City. And came back here as the president of the Light Group in 2007, and 9 months later, I opened my first restaurant in San Diego. That was, something I did. I went out on my own, and had just a great time over the years. But we created, our company Hospitality Alliance 5 years ago from the executive vice president of development at the Dream Hotel, because he hired my then management company to operate all the food and beverage at the Dream Hotel in South Beach, and we had a rooftop nightlife venue in New York City. And one day he's like, I'm ready to go out on my own. Tell me about how you did. I said, well, I advise you not to do what I did, because I went out on my own in 2008, 2009 was the financial crisis. So I was really good at working for free those years. And so, it grew, but, our sweet spot is food halls. We had 2 open food halls. We have one that was supposed to open April 1st at AT&T's World Headquarters. Beautiful space that's sitting empty. But, we were doing food halls, hotel food and beverage operations, and then the 4 restaurants that we have. And those are all gone. Not sure when they'll reopen, but, we're doing some cool projects with some cool people. And I'm sure that it'll come back eventually, but right now it's a struggle with our industry, and so that's why I think independently knowing each other, and I think it's fair to mention all of us were involved and are involved in Epicurean Charitable Foundation, and we talk about the restaurant industries in high school. I mean, I remember when we had the conversation of it was called the Epicurean Club, and then I think it was at one dinner, it was a bunch of food and beverage people getting together and having great fellowship and eating and drinking really well. And I remember about a year into it, we looked around, we had a formidable group and we should give back. And I remember the conversation and see, we should help UNLV. And then it kind of got to, somebody said, how many people started working in restaurants in high school? Almost every hand went up. It's like, why don't we help high school kids? And so it'll be 20 years next week. Or next year, 20 years in 2021. So,
but one last question. I know that you have been involved with the Restaurant Coalition about another round of funds for the industry.
Yes. Well, right now there's a lot of Democratic support for it. We're trying to get Republican support, but I think that like Kelley's landlord, we're going to end up having to wait until after the election because I think that it has become too political. It's become too partisan. The Republicans put forth a stimulus package that the Democrats deemed too skinny. And so they're just going to, keep combating one another until this election's over, and then we can focus on helping the people that really need it, which is sad, but I think it's the reality.
This is only 40-something days now.
Well, but those 4 days are, every day you're going to read a restaurant obituary of, we're going to lose more and more.
And it's actually longer than that because the chance of us knowing who won on Election Day, a lot of these races, is probably not going to happen right away. And then you've got that lame duck period in between, them taking office. So we're talking the end of the year before we see anything happen.
And for me, as an immigrant to America, and I came here in the 80s, and I do remember really well that people have friends who are Democratic, friends Republican, friends Independent. And we all go out for beer, and we all joke, and they make fun of each other, politics, but nobody really took so serious about it.
Yeah, they weren't having fist fights.
Right. Everybody thinks, okay, no big deal, but now it is very, even as a business for all of us, you have to be such on the edge because you don't know anything that you can say as your personal opinion as a business, not even a political party, can be so dangerous because people can take you so wrong.
The cancel culture. It's if the CEO of a company that happens to own part of your company is supporting somebody that someone doesn't like, it's boycott this. I read there was a Swedish oat milk company that was, partially owned by someone that related that supported Trump, and there was a boycott. That the president of Goya, what happened to freedom of speech? Even if you don't agree with it, what happened to freedom of speech? Okay, it's disheartening.
Well, I go a step further, and it's actually happened in Burlington, Vermont, on Church Street, which is a local pedestrian mall like Lincoln Avenue in South Beach. And
for 1 month a year.
Yeah, well, two.
Not too cold.
It's, but there was a letter that was being passed around from the Church Street Marketplace Foundation to sign because homeless had gotten so bad up there, and the police weren't doing anything. It was like people going to the bathroom right on the street, right? It was bad, and then costing people, making it not safe for our staff to go home at night. So we all co-authored a letter that basically said, can we do something to support the homeless so that they aren't on the street like this? And next thing I know, we're being picketed because we signed the letter. Oh. And they said it's because we wanted to make homelessness a criminal or a crime. It's like that doesn't say anything like that. So unfortunately, you know what we did? We took our names off the letter.
We bothered you about the future.
Well, I first of all think it's so cool that you're doing something like this and getting people together and dialogue. You know, Kelley and I feel like we're in touch because we're social media friends, so we get to read. But it's sometimes just nice to take an hour and sit down with business professionals. And look, I am optimistic about the future. I know anyone listening to this podcast probably wants to shoot themselves with depression after this, but I am going to go have a glass of wine, and I just can't wait to wake up from this bubble and for the good part.
I think just it's funny because politically I grew up in a very conservative Republican household. My dad was the chairman of the New Jersey Republican State Committee. I met on my 8th birthday. We went to Nixon's inauguration. It's like, and then of course, as a teenager, I rebelled against all that, became a complete, socialist. And as I get into business, the pendulum swung right back into the center, and I'm a registered independent, and I vote both sides of the aisle. I'm that guy that actually watches CNN and Fox News. And I tell you what, if you watch those two programs back to back, you would think you're in a different country.
Yeah, but if you don't watch both of them, you have no idea what exactly is going on.
So, my big thing is, have empathy. Have empathy for people, put yourself in their shoes. You don't know what they're going through. And, we'll all come through this together. We're in this together, and it doesn't do us any good to know all of us are in this together, but we are. And, that's why I think, the passion for us feeding the community is
such a great cause.
I mean, and the need is real, and we'll be out there until there isn't a need.
Appreciate. The only thing I can say, every day I felt my gas, and people and my staff, we have to be every day optimistic, feel positive energy, because it's the only way you're going to overcome it, because it is so much dark out there. All those things happen. You start looking and watching, like the friends, your wife. You want to get out of the house. You want to stay home because you're afraid the virus is going to take you out of driving. So you need to really stay positive and optimistic. You're going to overcome better days. And you're going to have a great 2021 starting. Seeing the industry start coming back and getting a great 2022 and so on. Because life is beautiful.
Cheers to that.
Thank you.
Life is beautiful, and we want to go next year.
Thanks for watching. This was Coffee Conversations by Sambalat, episode number 8. Thank you. Thanks for watching Coffee and Conversation, a podcast by Sambalat. Please subscribe below to our channel so we can be alert to the future podcast that we're going to have. Thank you.